Lisa, welcome back to my channel. If you've been here before, you know what I'm all about. I'm creating my dream wardrobe from scratch and I'm taking you along for the ride so maybe you can recreate some of the pieces that I make at home. Something is a little bit different. I do have Invisalign aligners now, so be prepared for a very strong Coach Beard-esque lisp in this video. If you watched my last video, you know that already. However, yeah, let's not get distracted by this. So it's the start of a new season. I just wrapped up my fall series and all of the pieces that I made there. Go watch the video that I uploaded last week for that. And I'm now preparing to head into what is one of the favorite seasons of the year for me personally. It's also my birthday season, you know, Sagittarius for the win. And it's a time of year where we have loads of occasions where we can dress up and look pretty and you know, put our best foot forward in terms of sartorial goodness. So I thought I'm gonna dedicate the next couple of weeks to create a few festive dresses that we can wear when we meet family, chosen family, friends, and have a good time. So this week I start with my first dress, and I asked you what kind of fabrics you're thinking of when you're thinking festive fashion, and a lot came up. Well, the obvious choices were probably like velvet, sequins, silks, anything that's kind of sparkly and shiny and soft and beautiful. And I'm gonna start with Scuba. It's a bit of a funky choice, I know, for festive fashion, but hear me out. The dress is inspired by not one specific look, but generally the style of Nicolas Ghesquiere at Louis Vuitton. Interestingly, fun fact, I used to work for Louis Vuitton a couple of years ago when I was at uni. I was there almost for 3 years, and I was surrounded by all these beautiful garments and bags and shoes, and I had a great time there. It was a lot of fun. And I also have still 2 bags from that time that I really love, which are close to my heart because there are memories attached to them. So this model this week, the dress this week, is inspired by this kind of style, which generally oftentimes consists of mini façon and like an A-line skirt shape. Nicolas Ghesquiere loves to combine different kinds of fabrics and colors in one look. So for example, he would make a bodice that is out of one fabric, maybe something very structured. Then he would add maybe a very shiny patent leather belt, some silk sleeves, there's going to be zips and things like that, some pockets. So it's very eclectic, very futuristic, but also a little bit inspired by American leisure, if that makes sense. And I just love it. I love that look. So my dress this week is going to be inspired by that. And I'm going to show you how I created the pattern, and then I'm going to show you how to sew it. And in the end, hopefully we're going to have a beautiful final reveal, as we always do. Okay, let's jump into this. So the first step to sewing this dress is to start with the top of it, with this white section. This includes, we have the front, we have the back, we have the standing collar, and we also have a zip here that we will need to enter in the center front, and that also needs to be hidden somewhere between lining and shell. I think the first step will be to join the front and the back at the shoulders, so we can then insert the collar. I'm going to sew the shoulder with a stitch length of 3.5. Okay, shoulder seams are sewn and serged. Now we can insert the collar. Take your collar piece and determine the center back, so the middle point of this. Now place your top in front of you so that the right side is facing you, and align the center back of the top and the center back of the collar. Now you can start to pin the collar onto the center back without adding any tension. Just pivoting the collar so it aligns with the rounded neck hole. Make sure that the seam allowance of your shoulder seam is folded into the back, like so. And do this until your collar is pinned to your top. There should be some overlap in the front. We will need this for the zip later. So what I will do now is I will give this a straight stitch with a stitch length of 3.5. Okay, so now the collar is attached to the top. And now we will have to think about how to add zip. First, we need to determine how high we want the collar to be. I don't want it to be just as high as I cut it here. So say we want it to be 4 centimeters high. We will have to mark that somehow. And I'm going to do that by nipping the seam allowance here. So this is my half point. I do that same thing on the other side, placing my measuring tape, folding it over, and this is my half point. That means the zip ends at this half point. So my assumption at the moment is that I take the zip and I place it onto the top, right sides touching like so, and then I sew as close to this line as I can. I'm gonna place the seam allowance of the collar into the collar because this is gonna be hidden away later. And then I do the same thing on the other side. Once that is done, I can overturn the collar like so, sew up here, and then when I overturn it all, you can only see this part of the zip. So I will try to do that now and see what happens. Okay, I've sewn it in and as closely to the teeth of the zip as I could. And it looks good from the outside, I think. Now I have to do the same thing on the other side to make sure that the zip closes in the lines. Okay. The zip is in. I would say it looks good and clean. Success. Next step, I will fold the collar over the zip like so, and then I will sew as close to the teeth of the zip again as I can. So when I overturn it, we have a nice finish for the collar. Now, the challenge at hand is that we fold the seam allowance in and place it onto the seam allowance that is folded upwards into the collar and place a pin, and we need to do that all the way around at first. And also again, all of that without adding any tension because this is stretchy fabric. I think the only real option I have to make this look really beautiful is to close it by hand, which I will do. Okay, so the day has passed. I had a lot of work to do, so I couldn't really sew anything, but I have some time now. The first thing I will do before I continue with the piece is I'm gonna try a technique that I've been planning to use for joining the bottom of the dress and the top of the dress together. And I bought this piping, which is cotton piping. Preferably I would have liked to have some silk or satin piping, but I couldn't find any, so I bought this one instead. And I'm gonna try attach this here as I would at the dress, just to see what it looks like on the outside and if it's worth it, if the effect is big enough. Because I chose contrasting colors for the top and the bottom anyway, I'm not so sure about the effect it's going to have, but I'll give it a try and see what it looks like. So the way to do this, I assume, I've never done piping before, is to sandwich it between one piece and the other piece, between the right sides of both of them. And now I'll give this a stitch and see if I can sew this on in a straight manner so it looks nice. Oh, this looks nice. Yes, I like this. This gives it a very, very clean and sporty look, which is what I was hoping for. I really like this, yep. This works. Now let's grab the dress part. So we have the top. Now, I'm gonna start with the front. So I'm going to obviously remove the pins. Conscious of where the right side of the fabric is. This is my right side. I don't actually know if there is a right or a wrong side for this, but I've decided that this is my right side. I'm gonna place the right side of the dress onto the right side of the top that I made this morning. I placed the binding between the two layers of fabric, and I will start there. The binding isn't like at the very edge of the dress fabric. It's put inwards a little bit like so, because I want to stay true to my seam allowance. Oh, this is gonna be so tricky. I hope this is gonna turn out good. With the zip and everything, it's not gonna be easy. Okay, now let's have a look. We turn this the right side out. It doesn't look so bad. Yes, guys, this looks really good. Look at this. This is amazing. I love it. Love, 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 love it. I love it. Right, that looks good as well. So I think the trick with the piping actually is to sew much closer to, you know, you feeling it than you actually think. Because in the first go, I was a bit too afraid to like sew over it. So this time it only took me one go and it's in. So this is what we're looking at. We have the front completely put together, as well as the back completely put together. The piping looks amazing. I love it. It's actually perfect because the 3D effect of this scuba would have resulted in a very unclean looking seam here, and the piping actually makes it look more clean, which I love. So in this case, my sleeve actually has a front and a back because it bends a little bit in one direction for ease of movement. So I have a front part of the side seam and the back part of the side seam. So what I'm going to do to remember which is I'm going to add 2 snips here. 1, 2, to remember where the front is. And I'm going to do the same thing in armhole curve here. This is silk and it has a right and a wrong side. So this is the good side. So I'm going to place the 2 sides, right sides touching. Okay, so I'm going to give this a very careful stitch with a minimal seam allowance with a stitch length of 4.5. Like a glove. Whew, I'm relieved. Now the other one. So what I will do before I attach the sleeves to the dress is I'm going to finish the cuffs here. And I'm going to finish them very simply by pressing them over once and then once again. So I create a little tunnel here for a very narrow elastic to go through. I want the cuff to be cinched in and gathered around my wrist. So this is why I'm going to create this tunnel here, and then I'm going to insert an elastic. Alright, one sleeve is completely done. Now I have to do the exact same thing with the other, so see you in a bit. Okay, all the individual parts are finished. What I'm going to do next is I will close the side seam of the dress because I feel like the shoulders might be a little bit too broad. And once I've done that, I can insert the sleeves and finish the hem. And then we're done. Can you believe it? This looks like such a complicated piece, but I really did this in a day, if you count all the hours together. So let's see. I will now close the side seam of the dress to give it a first try. But before I do that, I need to cut back the zipper here. Interestingly, this is a zipper that came with 2 options of what kind of like, what is this little handle I want to use. I use this one as it looks more like a sweater zipper or something like this. This looks more like an ordinary jacket zipper. So I need to cut that back, and then I will add some bias tape to finish off these seams nicely before I actually close the side seams of the dress. Okay, looking good, looking neat. I like it. What needs to change is the apex of the shoulder. Should be more like here, and the armhole should open up more like down here. Alright guys, It's a new day, it's a new morning. I had to take a little bit of a break because I had to finish something else for my last tutorial before I could continue with this, but there's not much left to do on this dress. I just serged the side seams that I've sewn the other day, so that is clean and nice. The inside is looking good. What's left to do is I need to insert my finished sleeves as well as finish the length of the dress. So that's what I'm going to do today. But first, a sip of tea. Insert the sleeves. I will grab one and have a look. As you might remember, I created this little notch here in the front of my sleeves because these sleeves are asymmetrical. They have a front and a back. So this part of the sleeve is going to face forwards. So I need to keep that in mind. In this case, I'm currently having the right sleeve in my hand. So I'm going to grab my right armhole, place it in front of me, and then I'm going to start to pin in the sleeve by first placing the side seam of the sleeve as well as the side seam of the dress on top of each other. And I'm making sure that the right sides of both pieces are facing each other. I'll then start to pin the sleeve around the armhole. And the challenge here is probably that the sleeve is rigid and the dress is stretchy. So there are a few challenges here that present themselves. You shouldn't really stretch the dress any more than the arm can give. So those two things align. I have this seam here, which is where the piping went in. I'm also going to make sure that the seam allowance of this is going to face downwards rather than upwards because the white scuba is a little bit see-through, so I want to make sure that the seam allowance is hidden into the burgundy scuba that isn't see-through. The same thing applies to this seam here in the back, folding the seam allowance downwards into the burgundy scuba. Up next, I'm going to reach into the dress and take hold of the seam allowance and I'm going to pull it through like this. So I'm facing the inside of the dress, and this way I can insert the rest of my sleeve easily. So I know that there is a little bit of width in the sleeve, more so than in the dress, and that is on purpose because I want it to be just a little puffy. So my idea is to pin the sleeve in flush as far as possible, and then I'm going to measure how far up that is so I can create an even look for both of my armholes. And then for the rest of the width of the sleeve, I'm going to hand pleat it into a bit of a gathered situation. So you can see there's a lot more width here in the sleeve than there is left in the dress. So now I'm going to take my measuring tape and measure downwards. So we have 8 centimeters in the front, I think that is. And then we have 8 centimeters in the back. And from there onwards, I'm going to pleat the sleeve to create a gathered effect. Okay, so all of this is pinned in, and now carefully I'm going to turn it outside out. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine. I'm going to change the stitch length to 3.5. It doesn't have to be too small. And then I'm going to start by inserting the needle at the side seam. Sleeve number 1 is in. Okay, I just ran a few tests to see how I could finish the length of the dress, and this was my idea: to add a bias tape to it and then fold it over once and hand stitch it down to have that clean look on the outside. However, you can see every little hand stitch here in the scuba. No matter how little of the scuba that I grab, you can still see it on the outside. So since this fabric isn't fraying, I think I'm gonna just cut the dress and leave it at that. And then the other thing is I want to keep the seam allowance at the piping seams into the lower part of the dress. So I will add a stitch like here to keep it down. And I actually think it looks kind of neat and nice, just adds a little bit to it. I will do the same thing for the side seams to keep them facing into the back. So I will do that first, and then I can have another think about the length of the dress. surely can say that this is one of my all-time favorite makes, like no doubt. I'm in love with this dress. I love the color, I love the color blocking, I love the different materials, I love how it looks on me, the fit of it. The dress is also super lightweight, which is because of the scuba, so it's a really comfortable dress as well. And plus it keeps you warm because the scuba helps with the temperature exchange of your body, so it's really quite comfortable. So yeah, if you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, maybe leave a comment, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. We're only getting more and it's a fun journey, so come join us. See you next time.